Hello, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today I'm talking again about Knightscope. I'm going to be talking about their time to deployment, from a sales to deployment. Before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Knightscope, so basically this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything that I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So, today I'm going to be talking about what we know about how long it takes for Knightscope to actually deploy a robot versus when they actually receive the sale. And this this was talked about a little bit in their town hall. If you watched the town hall a couple weeks ago, they said that pre-pandemic they were at about 60 days from the time of the contract, time of till they actually got it at the client site, and then they said there was a little bit of a deployment time even after that. But let's say 60 days as a rough number. They said due to the pandemic and supply chain problems, it can be drastically longer. They didn't give a specific time. They said 60, 90, 120 days. And that it's fairly unpredictable and that they have issues both on the supply chain side, and I think it was in the town hall, but at least I know that they've mentioned this in the past. Sometimes they have issues on the actual client side, sometimes pandemic related, sometimes whatever. I don't know what else, red tape, I would imagine. So that is what they have said. But we do actually see them put out some PRs for, hey, we're deploying this robot. And here's one that they most recently did on Twitter. Right, this was just a couple days ago. They said, "Hey, we are deploying this K5 to a park." And so what I've done is I looked at all of the PRs that they put out, all the tweets and the actual press releases around their deployments, and I have tried my very best to match those up to prior sales announcements. And so I have the dates of both of those, and I don't expect either of those to be precise down to the day, but I expect them to be pretty close enough to where we can get some rough numbers if we look at the difference between those and use that as our best estimate of how long it takes them to actually deploy a robot. And I think this is a fairly reasonable way to do it, and this is the list of sales and deployments that I have. I was using deployments that had been announced, I want to say, from roughly the middle of 2021 until today. And yeah, I think the earliest deployment that I had was at the end of June 2021. These are not necessarily sorted. These are just the order I put them in that I had from another document. And I don't want to sort them now just in case it would mess up the charts that I have below. But these are, if you want to, pause, if you're not watching this live, and take a look. These are the actual sort of the headlines. Some of these aren't headlines; they're just sort of my notes to identify which particular sale it was. But I've done my best. I've sort of looked in detail at pictures and tried to match up, the text from the deployment PR to the sales PR for at least these, and this gives us 19 different data points that we can try to sort of look at what the trend has been, right? And we have this data over about 9 months. At this point, right? Because we did have the deployments going all the way back to the end of June last year. So, and again, feel free to fact check me, look back at your own notes if you want to. But this is what I have, and you can see the actual days to deploy here vary. The minimum amongst all of these, at least as far as I calculated it, was, I think, this one right here for 75 days. The longest, we have some of these up in the 230, 245. So that's the better part of a year. But you can see that that's not typical. And actually, if we go down, I did put a chart on here with the trend line here, and we can see, how many days it takes them to deploy for, each row that I showed above matches to one point here on the scatter plot. And then I put a trend line in here that shows you how over time, at least the data that I have, shows this changing. Now, there's a couple things that I do want to call out for this, because obviously this looks like a good trend that they're able to deploy faster and faster, and I think that's generally true. However, I do want to give a couple caveats there, and the one caveat, that the major caveat this from this, if you're not super into doing data in your day job, is there's a bit of a, I don't know if it's not necessarily survivorship bias, but it's a little bit, it is, because if there had been a sale on January 1st, it could not have possibly taken more than, I don't know, 110 days to deploy, right? So although these numbers look low, we haven't had so many days. We haven't had 245 days pass since January 1st of 2022, for there to even be numbers that are way up here. However, over time, we do see that this trend looks like it's going down, and we aren't seeing these huge outliers across all of these dates. We actually see things pretty tightly coupled, being shorter as time goes on. So we'll see a little bit. However, another way to actually look at this data is what were the days to deploy by the deployment date, right? And so this would be, if I make the x-axis now, the date that it was deployed, and then how many days has it been since the sale. And I have that chart right here. And that one looks a little bit less impressive, right? And I didn't actually put a trend line on here. I suppose I could, but I mean, it looks like it's roughly flat. You know what? I could probably do that in real time. It should only take a moment, and then we could, definitively see this. There we go. Look at that. So you can see it kind of sort of slopes down a little bit, but it's fairly flat. But again, the interesting thing here, the way that I actually interpret this is we are seeing a lot more deployments that are quicker, right? That actually, I think, does show here. We just saw less deployments 9 months ago. So there just isn't as strong of a, maybe if there had been more deployments at that time, but they were going slow, you would see a larger cluster up here, whereas you would see now a larger cluster down here, meaning faster deployments. So the way that, one way to interpret this data is actually, some of these slowdowns may have been due to supply chain and constraints on Knightscope side. Some of this may have been constraints on the client side, right? Because if you look at these, you can see, even if I scroll back up to this chart, you can see that some of these sales that they made almost a year ago, they were able to deploy fairly quickly, about as quickly as they are now. But some of them took way longer. And you do have to wonder, is this because Knightscope was prioritizing some deployments over some others? Or were there, constraints on the customer side? Was there more red tape, after they made the actual sale and got the purchase order for, before they could actually dot the I's and cross the T's and actually send it to the client site? It's hard to say, but that is at least one potential interpretation of this data that does not just scream out, supply chain issues and potentially paints a better picture for the near future. One other interesting data point that I got from this, because I think that I got every deployment announcement that they had, but it's possible I missed some, but from the ones that I saw, I tried to get them all. And who knows if they've been, maybe better at announcing these in recent times or in some particular times versus others. But it is at least interesting to look at this and look at, given the PR that they've put out, how many robots does that add up to in each month? And it's very interesting to see that, if we look across all of the second half of 2021 here, sorry, and I omitted the one in June of 2021. So that, I think there would actually be a small bar there for June of 2021. I just left it off here. If you look there, other than in, November, no, sorry, October, the 10th month, where they deployed 7 robots, or they had 7 announcements of deployments. They actually, I think that might have only been 2 announcements. I think they had a 5 and a 2, if I recall. That is up here. Yeah, a 5 and a 2. So that they had two deployments, but they were, for multiple robots each. If we look back down here, right, you can see that they didn't actually deploy all that many. And now you look at 2022 hitting, and they're deploying, and they're deploying more in March, and even more. And this is the most interesting part, at least as I read their updates. They're deploying even more in April. April's only half over, right? Or, I mean, I guess now it's the 19th, so we're about 2/3 over. But they could deploy even more. They might deploy as many in in April in 1 month, as they almost deployed the entire second half of 2021. So that's very interesting. Sad part is we won't actually see those numbers for quite a while, because that wouldn't be reported until their Q2 quarterly report that we'll probably see. What is that? Middle of August, I think, right? If I'm roughly thinking about when that reporting season will happen. So, let's we have quite some time to wait for that, but I thought that was interesting. So overall, I know that one of the other things that they touched on the town hall, sort of just to wrap up, is that they've actually stated that they're, there's just raised a lot of money. They can order more parts. They want to clear through their sales backlog, and they actually want to stock some robots so that they have them, and that when a customer, when they make a sale, they can deploy, quickly. And that would be, that both lets them, that the two benefits is obviously the customer is happier because they're able to deploy it faster. If the customer decided that, hey, we're happy, we want this, send it to us, we're willing to pay. So I think that's, obviously one major benefit. And another major benefit is they're able to start booking that revenue sooner, right? Because, just because they signed a contract, they don't actually get to record the revenue, and presumably they don't actually get their monthly payments from the customer until they've actually deployed a robot and it's there and providing services. So, we'll see how that goes. That's, it's a good trend if this is indicative, right? I mean, both of these are actually trending downwards slightly, but this one much more so. And if this is a closer depiction of reality, that could be really good for the company. And yeah, so that's roughly what I wanted to cover today. So let's see if there are any questions on the live chat. No, there aren't, not at the moment. So just for anybody who is still watching, I do these streams usually, it rounds out to be roughly around 10 p.m., plus or minus an hour-ish in Eastern US time. I try to do these Sunday through Thursday. I certainly don't get to it every night because my personal life is busy, but I do try. That's just so if you're ever interested in joining live and having some back and forth, asking me questions, ask me questions live. I'm happy to chat. If you're watching this after the fact, feel free to, ask questions, comments, and, ask questions or comments, whatever in the comment section below. I'll read them all, try to respond to all of them. So yeah, thank you for watching and have a good one.